How do you get the most out of your museum trips? Because they're great for your learning and for seeing those cool things in person. But even though I'd always be excited to go, I'd end up feeling bored, uninterested, or maybe like I had to rush everything. Many years later, I realized I was approaching museums with the wrong mind. Here, I just want to share some of those thoughts and even practical tips, which help me get the most out of my ticket price. And these are really simple changes that anyone can make. I say museums, but this applies to all sorts of exhibitions, whether it's art or history or whatever. And don't worry, because I'm not going to include any over-the-top note-taking bullshit or premium passes. This is all simple and it's all chill, just how your trip should be. This first one happens before you even step foot in a museum, and it's to find the small, hidden gems. To make your museum visits better, we first have to pinpoint what is it that makes them bad in the first place. And for me, I have two big problems. One, some of them are really big, and you just don't have time to see everything. And second, they're often really busy. So instead of being able to enjoy the exhibits, you're forced to weave your way through crowds. You have to survive against these waves of toddlers, and everyone's taking photo shoots of everything, and it's just annoying. And I feel like a lot of these big popular museums are commercialized. It's like, yeah, no shit. They cater to families, they cater to tourists, to social media. And none of that is bad. I'm not going to be a Scrooge. But for the regular person like you who just wants to see what's going on, see what's there, it can be frustrating. So my best solution to that problem was to just not visit them at all. Okay, I mean, I still do sometimes, but nowadays I prefer the smaller museums that kind of fly under the radar. Sure, you have your big dogs like the natural history museums and the portrait galleries, and they're great, but the small museums are where the heat is. They're off the beaten path, they don't scream out for attention. And as a result, that means they are quieter, usually cheaper, and most importantly, they're more manageable. They also tend to be more focused and niche, which means you can really understand a certain era or topic well. And to me, that's better than spreading your energy out thinly and you end up leaving without having learned anything. For example, lots of the footage you're seeing is from the Butter Museum in Cork. It's a small random museum in a small random city in Ireland. And no offense to Cork, but I can say that because I did live there. But hey, now I'm a master of butter. Can you say the same? It cost me £5 to get in. It took 1 or 2 hours to see everything. And it sets out to do just one thing well, which is to teach you about Irish butter. There's not much more you could ask for. Another example is the Wallace Collection, which is a fantastic museum. It's free, and despite being slap bang in the centre of London, it's never really that busy, which shows you just how underrated places like this are. So of course, if you're ever around, I would check it out. A lot of these hidden gem museums tend to just be the private collection of some long dead rich guy. And as a rule of thumb, the more morally questionable they were in their life, the better the collection. So look for the evil ones. So just to summarize, instead of always going to the large museums, do a bit of research and try and find the small hidden gems. Number 2 is to only focus on what catches your interest. Despite tip number 1, I would never say to just avoid large museums completely. They are some of the best collections. They're stacked. And that's where tip number 2 comes in. A big stress of museums comes from the scale. There's so much to see, and if you have a completionist mindset like me, you feel like you have to look at every item, to read every plaque, and to explore every room. Otherwise, it's not truly complete. It sounds good on paper, but it's not. You're sabotaging yourself because you spend time on things that you don't truly care about. And of course, that takes away from the time that you have with the things that you do care about, that do truly interest you. So in a weird way, you end up rushing through everything. It's like going to a restaurant which serves you one of everything on the menu, but they only give you one bite of each. Like, sure, there's variety, but you don't have the space to enjoy the best meals, the things you really liked. That's why in bigger museums, I tend to skip a lot. I will go into a room, I will scan what's on offer, and if something does catch my interest, then yeah, I will give it more careful attention. I'll read the plaque, I'll look at it for longer. But then if something doesn't appeal to me or it doesn't really get me going, I will just gloss over it and walk away. For example, you might walk into this great hall with 20 or 30 paintings, but because you have limited time, you only spend your attention on 5 of them. And you really scrutinize them and study them, and they speak to you. And that is, to me, quality over quantity. And this works on a larger scale too. Like when I visit an archaeology or natural history museum, I will almost always skip past the Egypt section. And no offense to ancient Egyptians, but that part of history, that period, just doesn't do anything for me. I don't care. So instead of forcing myself to read through everything, I would rather save that time and energy on something I do like the ancient Greeks or the Mesopotamians. It just makes more sense. Just before the next point, which is probably the most controversial on this list, I want to mention that I have a newsletter. It's free to sign up down below. It's not spammy at all. I will not harass your inbox, that's a promise. And of course you can expect similar topics to what you see on here, But then there's also room for more niche and in-depth things. There's the odd essay, there's book review sometimes, and things that the algorithm hates in general. So I'd really appreciate if you signed up, and I'll see you there. Now, the last idea worked in theory, but I hear you. What if the museum is a banger? What if it's large and everything inside it is cool and you do want to see it? What do you do then? In those cases where the museum is large and I still want to see everything but I don't have time, I will purposefully shrink my visits and not go to every room or every floor. That sounds crazy at first, I know, but it will make sense with a story. I love military museums. Now, of course, it's important to know the history of war and to see how these conflicts shaped us in the future, but I'm also just a guy. I like to ogle weapons and tanks and planes. They are sexy. There's a war museum in Athens that I really like, and it's a big building. It has multiple floors with, all sorts of different eras and technologies and conflicts, and there is just a lot to see. I love it. But the truth is, you don't have time to enjoy it all. And if you do want to see everything, you either have to show up early and spend the whole day there, which does get tiresome, or you have to kind of rush and really push yourself to move on, which leaves you feeling unsatisfied. That's what happened to me the first time. I started slow, but I realized I'll be here all day if I don't rush a little bit. And I ended up kind of skipping over a lot. Nowadays, if I know that the entire museum is interesting to me, I will purposefully limit myself to one section for that visit. So when I next visited the War Museum, I told myself, okay, for this visit, you're going to spend your time in the section on the Greek War of Independence. Nothing before, nothing after, just that section. Which is still pretty big, mind you, and it did cover a few hours. Then maybe on the next trip, I will dedicate my time to the next section, or the next floor, which, in this case could be the Balkan Wars or something. You might think this sounds like a waste of your ticket, and I understand that, but I would say it's the opposite. I think by limiting yourself, you give each section the time and energy that it deserves, instead of just rushing through everything. It's the whole quality versus quantity debate again. Yes, you didn't see everything. But what you did see, you read, you enjoyed, you savoured. And of course, if you have the time and the mental room to continue, by all means do so. This is just a rough guideline that kind of helps me balance my energy. But you can break free and just do whatever you want in that moment. Maybe I'm crazy with this tip, I don't know. I mean, do you do something similar, or does it at least make sense to you? I'm curious to know. My final piece of advice is to go with people who care or go on your own. You know what pisses me off more than anything? Is when you go to a museum with people who clearly don't give a shit. They fidget around, they fly through everything, and worst of all, you hear complaining. And look, I was once the same. I get those feelings. Not everyone wants to appreciate art or history or whatever, and they just want to be doing something else. The problem is when people like that drag down your own experience. But did you know this dynamic also goes the other way? Because if you go to a museum with someone who likes it even more than you do, you're going to have 10 times more fun. They can waffle on about their passion, and you have someone to talk to. You can ask them questions. You can help each other interpret what you're seeing, or you can just, hear some cool details from them. For example, I'm loosely interested in art. I dip my toes. I like paintings. I appreciate them. I've got Thomas Cole here in the background, but that's pretty much where it ends. My friend, however, is much more interested in it and more knowledgeable. He knows the eras, the movements, the techniques, more painters as well, and that stuff is beyond me. When we were in Amsterdam together in the galleries, it was fun to hear his take on stuff, to discuss different paintings, to, debate over what good art means, and just to, get an idea of all these different movements which he knew about. It's way more fun than going alone because it's almost like having a personal tour guide. And of course, the reverse is true. Maybe you go to a museum where you have the expertise, and it's a chance for you to, ramble on freely about your passions and your interests. And, they get to ask questions and learn cool things that they may not see on the plaques or whatever. Now, those are the main ideas. But I wanted to keep this bonus section for the smaller things. The things which people tend to overlook but can really make or break the entire experience. First up, eat something before or during your visit. Because you can be on this once-in-a-lifetime trip to the Sistine Chapel or some equally grand location, but your stomach does not give a shit. Regardless of where you are, if you're hungry, you're hungry. And sometimes that's the only thing you can think about for the next 2 or 3 hours. So try not to let that nagging feeling ruin the whole visit. And carry water too, because museum thirst is no joke. Second, try to check in your bag and your coat into the cloakroom. Because the last thing you want to be doing is trudging through the museum like you're on a hike with this big bag and this long, heavy winter coat. It's uncomfortable, it makes you overheat. It's not nice. And I promise, as soon as you let it go and give it to them, you feel liberated. And thirdly, it can be nice to split up your visit to the museum with a food or drink. You wouldn't think it, but museums do get tiring. You're focusing for hours, you're reading, you're standing still most of the time. It's nice to sit down every now and then. If there's a cafe or a restaurant built into the museum that isn't insanely overpriced, I sometimes like to pay a visit, have a drink, eat something, chat, relax, and then you feel refreshed to continue the second leg of your trip. As always, the best part of these videos are the comment sections. I love to hear what you think. If you agree with me, if you disagree, if you have any good advice to offer for everyone else, it's always really useful and interesting. And of course, feel free to email me too. I take ages to respond, I'm sorry, but I do read it and I do reply. If you like this video, I think you'll also enjoy this one on screen, which is about, how you can work productively, but also in a realistic way that's kind of healthy and sustainable. And you don't want to, kill yourself by the end of it. And finally, thank you so much for watching. I'm really grateful.